All right, that's an adjournment until tomorrow morning at 8:30. Police Minister Mchunu, who is currently on special leave, was back at the Madlanga Commission. The Commission's chairperson, Justice Mbuyiseli Madlanga, has been asking him some hard-hitting questions after he concluded his statement, which included events before and after he issued that disbandment letter on the 31st of December 2024. Now, Mchunu has had to explain to the Commission why, if he had, quote unquote, such a very good relationship with SABC's National Commissioner General Canny Maphanga, why did he drop a bombshell of disbanding the political killings task team without consulting General Maphanga? Justice Madlanga asked him, in fact, on what basis did the minister think that the PKTT expected or anticipated that they could be disbanded when right up to the very last meetings of the IMC, that's the Interministerial Committee meetings, the PKTT was being praised. I mean, he also says part of his decision, that's the minister now, was based on the review meetings that were held on in November of that year. You will recall he mentioned the 1st of November and the 22nd of November, and the preliminary report he received from General Maphanga on the 22nd of January. Now, according to him, the report indicated the objectives of the PKTT had been achieved, insisting that the PKTT was always a temporary ad hoc task team, not a permanent SABC unit, and that it wasn't included in the 2024 organizational plan for SABC. We're going to be speaking to our reporter Canny Maphanga, who's monitoring developments for us. Another thing that he has conceded to is that during the November review meetings, there was no explicit point at which the decision to disband was made. Also, again, conceding that the best person he should have consulted with and who was best placed to brief him was, in fact, General Maphanga. And in fact, that is something that Justice Madlanga really wanted him to know and place, that statement too. Canny Maphanga joins us now. Canny, of course, the police minister, Mchunu, has completed has taken the commission through his statement. I want to talk about just some of the highlights from his statement, but more importantly, Canny, that line of questioning from the commission's chairperson, Justice Madlanga, I beg your pardon, just on specific questions and in fact, just probing him to actually concede to the fact that he really didn't consult with General Maphanga, a man he says he had a very good working relationship with, among others.
Indeed. Good afternoon to you, Nati, and to the viewers at home. You may remember that we stated earlier this week that this, foundation that the police minister, Mchunu, who was on a leave of absence, tried to set with the disbandment announcement, that it was a political intervention and that it was never something that was going to be lasting for a long time in the organizational structure, and that it was an interim intervention, and that he had consulted a 5-month study and then was able to reach the conclusion that the murders, or the overall murders of the nation, were more pressing than that of the political killings task team. He came back today armed with the constitutional framework as well as the legislative framework and, of course, those statistics in order to seemingly prove that the decision was rational and that it was lawful, the decision that he took on the 31st of December 2024. But remember, we stated earlier this week that a lot of the stuff that he has put together is going to be quite difficult to walk back because of that particular issue relating to the circumstances surrounding this particular decision. There are so many elements that raise questions as to why the police minister would have conducted this in the manner that he did. Now, if you look at the Commission's bench, some of those questions are emerging now as we expected, because the number one question is, why was there such a rush to ensure that this PKTT is disbanded. He says that he took some time to reflect on the 29th, 30th and the 31st, and that's when he reached the conclusion that this team was no longer needed in policing and that they were going to redirect those resources to murders and robbery. He also goes on to state that he had a good relationship with General Canny Maphanga, but we're hearing evidence previously that Maphanga was at a funeral prior to that and didn't hear about this looming announcement from the police minister there, and that all of the top management, as well as the KZN DPP and anyone who is quite significantly involved in the work of the PKTT, including its members, it was a bombshell to all of them that this particular team had been disbanded. We're also hearing evidence that in the 5 months that he had started his work, this is the first team, rather, from the South African Police Services that has been disbanded. All of the other teams are still currently in operation as we speak. As I've stated, Unati, there's quite a number of questions surrounding the conduct of the minister, why this decision was so rushed, why there was no meaningful consultation. He can't point to a single warm body that would have been able to advise him of the PKTT before taking such a decision, even though we know the insinuation is that at the very least General Canny Maphanga should have been the person consulted prior to taking that decision. And he also, besides that constitutional framework that he came with today and the statistics, seemingly in a bid to prove that, of course, this decision was quote-unquote rational, he can't explain the other events that have taken place in this kind of surprise bombshell announcement that the judge has described it as a means to justify the kind of conduct that we are seeing in the disbandment of the PKTT, why this particular unit was targeted and why the decision had to be immediate. But of course, I'm joined by SABC News political editor Zondile Mbecha to gain further insight on this testimony as we expected it to head in the direction that it was heading. Of course, I stated 2 days ago when he first started that, of course, he's adopted a new strategy which seeks to reconstruct the events in order to paint a rational, foundation to the decision to disband the PKTT. But once again, there is a number of events surrounding that decision that make it difficult to comprehend as a rational decision, such as the rushed period upon which it is taken, the inability to consult with your high-ranking tops management of SABC, who you say you have a good relationship with, and of course these statistics that don't quite match the inter-ministerial meeting minutes, which say at all times that they're very happy with the work of the PKTT and why it is established, rather, and why it continues to do the work. So of course you have these two realities he's trying to deal with that are not coinciding before the Commission as we expected.
Indeed, and I think what the Commission would want to know, and perhaps where the Minister would need to be able to be clear as to why exactly he did what he did in the manner in which he did. So this comes against the background of the fact that the Commission has a particular mandate to investigate. Remember, we are talking about one area which is quite key. But the Commission will have to then look at all that evidence and see if it does point to the kind of accusations, for example, that General Mkhwanazi has made. Remember, one of the key accusations is that the criminal element has infiltrated the work of the police. So then the question is, did that happen to the minister? Are there elements or are there people who may have influenced the minister to take this decision? So for me now, having listened to what the Commission is saying and the kind of questions they are putting, is to perhaps then establish in the course of the evidence tomorrow and beyond, were there people who may have influenced the minister in the wrong way in taking the decision. So that is what I guess the Commission is going towards with these questions.
Indeed, and I know the Minister hasn't gotten there yet, but there was this allegation that this was allegedly to shield criminal cartel syndicates that were allegedly funding his presidential ambitions. What kind of impact does this have for the political landscape and the kind of internal political party funding campaigning, if it is proven that indeed it wasn't about just a pure reflection on day 29th, 30th and 31st of December, but was to eliminate, allegedly, this team that was closing in on the alleged source of campaigning funds, if that is the case?
I mean, I can tell you, for free, if there were to be evidence that some of those people were directly linked to the kind of decisions or funding, his political career in terms of the ambitions will be over. So that's why it will be very important for this commission to be able to establish if this was a decision which was taken out of naivety or a decision that was taken innocently, thinking I'm doing the right thing. So this commission will have to be able to somehow prove that. Because I can tell you, Kenny, if then there's some sort of evidence that those criminal elements influence the decision, so politically that will be very damaging. But until then, so we will want to hear the entirety of the evidence. Remember, there are still other people who are still to come and give evidence. And then, of course, he himself is not done. Tomorrow he'll still be questioned, and beyond that, I know that in January, well, not necessarily in January, but in the new year, he will also be allowed an opportunity to continue because there are so many other areas to be looked into.
You say there are other people to still come in this evidence, but there are witnesses who have preceded his evidence and deal with it, quite frankly, that not one of those witnesses, whether it be the high-ranking SABC officials or the KZN DPP, that is Advocate Elaine Harrison, knew about that particular decision. They all learnt about it on social media, but there is evidence before the commission that actually Brown Mokhotsi had the knowledge 24 hours before it went live on social media for the first time, at least, and communicated it to Vusimuzi Katmatala, the alleged cartel member who is alleged to have funded those alleged presidential ambitions. Is there anything else you could draw from that beyond what the commission is saying? And I know it's not a conclusion yet, but the commission is saying it's quite strange that you're reducing it to just mere assessment. However, there are all these instances which raise questions about what could possibly be the motivation behind such a decision.
I think the beauty of this commission, Kenny, in fact, you and I were speaking about it, to say it's very different from the ad hoc committee, which is more political, which is more theatrical as well, because politics, it is the nature of politics. This commission tends to follow more facts in terms of when it determines the issue. For me, will the commission be able to then come up with facts to say, for example, Brown Mokhotsi did this on behalf of the minister under instruction from the minister? I wonder if someone like Matlala will also be called, but from what he has said from Parliament, I don't know whether there will be any other version, but given that the Commission looks more into some of the issues fact-based, so it's something really to look forward to.
But at this stage, as you see the evidence right now, the foundation laid versus the circumstances are quite not adding up at this stage.
Yes, because the Commission seems to be interested more on one particular aspect versus what I think the minister would have wanted them to believe. He basically laid the foundation of how he came about in terms of taking the decision, but the Commission says, no, it's fine, we've heard you. All we want to know is that when you took this decision around this particular time, who did you inform? Who did you speak to? Who did you consult? That's where I think the disjuncture comes from, is that you come with a different angle, the Commission comes with another angle. So that's where you have to explain yourself. Quite interesting.
Well, I'm not sure that it's different angles. I think the point precisely is that the foundation he has laid has little to do with the conduct that has been explained before the Commission. But that brings our time to an end as he continues with that testimony. That is SABC political editor Mzwandile Mbeche reflecting on the testimony of Police Minister Senzo Mchunu, who is now on a leave of absence. Of course, he has reached that point where his testimony is uninterrupted. And of course, now the Commission's bench is starting to ask questions. And again, the foundation that he tried to lay to give a rationale behind the decision of the disbandment of the PKTT is under sharp focus, because the events and the circumstances and the conduct surrounding that 31st of December decision is not quite adding up with the constitutional framework and the statistics that he sought to present before the Commission today, as he continued with proving, I guess, his testimony that this decision was rational and it was above board, and of course he took it with consideration of a number of elements. However, we are seeing through the testimony and through the questions that it is becoming quite crucial as to the manner in which the PKTT disbandment decision was taken, the lack of consultation that would have preceded that particular decision, apologies, and of course the subsequent conduct that followed in terms of the rushed approach to ensure that this PKTT was no longer doing that work and that their dockets were transferred from KZN to the Pretoria headquarters. But of course, he is not nearly done with that testimony. He will continue at 8:30 a.m. tomorrow morning, that is an hour early again, in order for the Commission to get through that evidence. And then of course tomorrow night will be the last day for the first half of the Madlanga Commission. After tomorrow, they'll begin penning that prelim report that will be given to the President at least by the 17th of December or before. And that will give the President an indication as to the kind of problem, if any, that South Africa is facing with respect to this particular question that the Commission has to answer whether there is this alleged infiltration of criminal syndicates within South Africa's criminal justice system. So the viewers should stay put and join us again at 8:30 in the morning, of course, when he takes that stand again to continue with the testimony. And I'm sure, based on the kind of questioning we've seen so far, that more questions will be raised in light of the circumstances that surrounded that PKTT disbandment, and of course the testimony from various key role players about how in the dark they were about this particular decision, as well as what the possible motivation and alleged influence could have been behind this critical decision to disband this particular team that was making inroads within the KZN province. And we're now hearing that their mandate had been extended, and that counterintelligence was receiving support from this particular structure in their operations in organized crime to nail those particular alleged criminal syndicate members. Over to you in studio.
Canny Maphanga, thank you so much for that comprehensive report. Of course, Canny also speaking early on to Mzondile Mbeje, who is the politics editor here at the SABC. Of course, looking at the various vantages according to this Madlanga Commission, which is looking at political interference, corruption and criminality within the criminal justice system too. Of course, as Canny said, the Commission back at 8:30 tomorrow. All right, we continue with more news for you right now.